Vet discovers the unbelievable as dog gives birth to hidden miracles. It's not what you'd expect. Jake had spent years serving in places most people couldn't bear to think about, but returning home brought its own struggles. The small town of Maplewood wrapped around him like an endless gray fog, isolated in its quaintness. He had settled into a monotonous routine, returning each evening to his modest house, where Daisy, his spirited rescue dog, greeted him with unconditional love. It was a connection he deeply cherished, despite the ever-thickening walls of desolation growing within him. One chilly evening, after a long day repairing tractors at the farm equipment store, he sank into his worn-out recliner, coffee in hand, exhaustion creeping into his bones. Suddenly Daisy began pacing, her nails clicking against the wooden floor, a strange urgency radiating from her. Something was off. Panic washed over him, and he instantly set his coffee aside, rushing to her side. "What's wrong, girl?" he murmured, kneeling beside her as her breathing quickened. In that moment fear gripped him. Was she in pain? Was something seriously wrong? Then it happened. Daisy began to whimper, her body tensing as if overcoming an unseen force. Confusion flooded Jake's mind. He hadn't even considered this possibility. He was a combat engineer, not a dog midwife. But slowly, fear morphed into a strange exhilaration, amplifying his pulse as Daisy brought her first puppy into the world. One after the other, the squirming little creatures emerged, their cries breaking through the silence of the house. And then Jake felt it, a shift, a tingling of hope born from her labors. But as the days unfolded, he noticed something even stranger. Each puppy seemed to have an uncanny intuition chiseled into their very beings. They nuzzled against his hand when he felt a tightness in his chest, or curled next to him when shadows of dread loomed. As he nurtured them, shadows of isolation began to give way to the glimmers of connection. Laughter erupted as neighborhood children entered the yard, squealing with delight at the puppy's antics. Yet with every joyful bark, his heart clenched tight with thoughts of responsibility and morality. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But then Sophie stormed in, an animal rights activist known for her fiery ideals. She cornered him at the local diner, her voice sharp and accusing. "You're breeding these puppies. You have no right. Don't you care about adoption?" The words hit him hard, and a storm of emotions clawed within. The guilt, the shame, centering into a chaotic whirlpool. Was he truly being selfish by keeping them as a source of comfort? Did he hold a responsibility to the community? Her voice echoed in his mind with relentless intensity. As he watched Daisy, nurturing her pups, he felt conflicting tides pull at his heart. Those little puppies were more than just dogs. They represented a second chance, a spark of connection he desperately craved, but didn't know how to grasp. Guilt mixed with a burgeoning sense of purpose. But he hesitated, feeling the weight of a spiraling dilemma. Each adoption felt like a lifeline back to the community. Yet every encounter with Sophie solidified his fears. What if he was crossing a line? The puppies had a chance at life, but there was a lurking uncertainty. And just when he thought he had found his footing again, he overheard joyous shouts from the park. Children squealed with excitement, talking about puppies. Desperation gripped him. A flicker of hope ignited anew. But as anger simmered within him toward Sophie, a haunting thought lingered. Could he truly navigate the murky waters of community and friendship if he let fear turn him back into the shadows? Now, staring into Daisy's sincere eyes, Jake stood at a precipice. Could he embrace this new purpose without losing himself again? The morning sun filtered through the dusty window, casting warm rays into the small living room where Jake sat, surrounded by Daisy and her pups. He felt an odd stillness settle over him, a serene feeling that held the promise of a decision weighing heavily on his heart. Each puppy squirmed and yipped, invoking a semblance of joy that seemed almost alien after years of isolation. Yet, beneath the surface, his mind seethed with unanswered questions. The encounter with Sophie lingered, a persistent ache in his conscience. Why was it so hard to reconcile his growing affection for the pups with the responsibility of finding them good homes? Jake hated to admit it, but he felt a sense of ownership blossoming inside him. These puppies were his now, his connection to a world he had feared losing forever. But ownership came with chains, rattling reminders of obligations he wasn't sure he was ready to shoulder. He took a deep breath, glancing at Daisy as she attended to her brood with tenderness. They were her legacy, a second chance for love and companionship in an otherwise indifferent world. Jake stood abruptly, pacing the hardwood floors with frustrated energy. The puppies yipped, mirroring his inner turmoil. "Am I bordering on selfishness?" he muttered, frustration clawing at his throat. If he kept them, would he be denying them the love and joy that came from being part of a family? The thought of his quiet house, once filled with silence, now ignited with exuberant chaos, appealed to him. Yet, another part, a deeper voice, questioned what would happen when they grew into full-sized dogs, demanding more than he could give. Jake resolved to put himself out there, to confront the growing whirlwind of emotions he felt toward Sophie. What did she know of companionship? Had she ever experienced life in the trenches of loneliness he had just begun to escape? There was a tension between his protective instinct for the puppies and a compelling urge to step beyond his static world. That afternoon he grabbed his phone and typed out a message to Sophie. He hesitated, fingers hovering above the screen. This was not a simple correspondence. This was a plea for understanding. "Can we talk?" was all he dared to type. While awaiting her reply, Jake took an introspective stroll with Daisy and her pups around the neighborhood. As the puppies rolled in the grass, he felt warmth flooding him when people reached down to pet them. Their laughter and joyful shouts filled him with a tranquil sense of belonging he hadn't tasted in ages. Each gentle touch from children broke through the walls he had meticulously constructed around his heart. A sudden thought struck him. Was it possible for him to live with both his comfort and responsibility? The roles of caretaker, friend, and community member began to intertwine, creating a complex tapestry of identity he hadn't dared to face before. It was daunting, but there lay a hidden strength in the simplicity of connection, a new clarity beneath the weight of authenticity. When the notification buzzed from his phone, Jake could feel his pulse quicken. Sophie had replied. "Sure, when and where?" This was his moment, a stepping stone, but uncertainty trickled into his veins. He read the message again, questioning whether he was brave enough to confront not only her convictions but his own hesitations. With determination flickering inside him, Jake stood tall, realizing that the path ahead would demand courage. He glanced down at the puppies, their trusting eyes reflecting innocence he yearned to protect. But as he contemplated meeting Sophie, a deeper dilemma nested in his heart. Would he embrace the messiness of connection, or retreat to the shadows that had long defined him? With long breaths he began typing a response but suddenly paused. The dogs cuddled closer, nipping at his shoelaces, grounding him in the present. But a whisper of doubt still nagged, echoing Sophie's words in his mind. "Do you care about adoption?" In that vulnerable moment before sending the message, Jake realized the time had come to face the truths lurking behind his desire for companionship. Would his answers lead to clarity, or would they unveil an even more complex web of conflicts he would need to navigate? Jake took a moment to physically orient himself before hitting send. The puppy's warmth seeped through to him. They were the embodiment of innocence, inviting him to embrace a world he had long resisted. His thumb hovered over the screen, adrenaline coursing through him as if he were preparing for a decisive leap. The moment stretched, each second heavy with unspoken words and impending revelations. Then, with a deep inhale, he pressed send. As if in response to his unsteady resolve, a lightness entered him, a flicker of hope. But it was quickly eclipsed by a sudden rush of anxiety. What would he say to Sophie? Would his vulnerability be met with understanding, or would she dismiss his conflicting feelings as stubbornness? He decided to face this storm head-on. He grabbed a notepad lying on the table, the words, "Embrace the chaos," scribbled across the top in bold letters. a motivational mantra he had written at the height of his isolation. It was amusing to think how far he had drifted from that bold declaration, but looking at those words now ignited a spark within him. As the minutes ticked by, composing his thoughts became more critical than dwelling on his fears. He spent the next half hour drafting a rough outline of what he might say to Sophie, focusing on the emotional landscape he was navigating with the puppies and with her. Each line brought clarity. He realized that sharing his journey could provide a bridge of understanding, one that might connect them in ways he couldn't yet foresee. With the outline resting heavily in his mind, Jake felt the shift internally. He was no longer standing on the sidelines of his own existence. He was stepping onto the field, ready to engage. He gathered up the puppies, their cheerful yips and wiggles fueling his determination. Maybe in taking this step he wouldn't just learn to care for them, but learn to care for himself too. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his reverie. There it was, Sophie's response. "How about the cafe on Elm at 3 p.m.? A rush of anticipation intertwined with doubt. Elm Cafe was cozy, a neutral ground where conversations flourished or faltered. As he drove to the cafe later that afternoon, he rehearsed the words he had penned down, but nothing could fully quell the roller coaster of emotions building within him. Would he articulate his fear of becoming too attached, or his equal dread of letting the puppies go? Openness felt like a double-edged sword, capable of slicing through his fears but also exposing him to profound vulnerability. Arriving at the cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee enveloped him, a soothing balm against the storm inside. He spotted Sophie sitting at a corner table. The easy smile that brightened her face sparked a sense of joy mingled with trepidation within him. He approached cautiously, each step feeling colossal, yet forward was the only direction he could go. "Hey!" Sophie greeted warmly, standing to embrace him with an unexpected hug. The physical connection was both grounding and electrifying. Jake felt his shoulders lower slightly. This was not just about him and the puppies, it was about the threads of connection that bound them all. "So, about those puppies," she started, bearing an expression that told him she was equally curious and concerned. He swallowed hard, the weight of her gaze compelling but also daunting. This was the moment to confront not only his feelings for the puppies, but also his burgeoning affection for Sophie. What would he reveal? How could he navigate the complexities of love, loss, and responsibility intertwined within his heart? As thoughts clashed violently in his head, Jake took a deep breath, determined to speak not just about his fears, but about the light shining through the chaos. Before he could gather his bearings to speak, an unexpected voice cut through the air, halting his words. "Excuse me, are you Jake?" Turning, he was met by a stranger carrying a familiar backpack. The puppies stirred restlessly within him, an instinctual alarm ringing loud. What was this about? The universe wasn't done challenging him yet, and that much he knew. Jake felt a wave of unease wash over him as he faced the stranger. There was something unsettling about the backpack, as if it held more than just the gear of a casual outing. The stranger, a young woman with vibrant blue eyes, stepped closer, an intensity in her expression that matched the tension curling in Jake's stomach. "Yes, I'm Jake," he managed, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "I thought it was you." Her gaze darted to the puppies, their playful antics absolutely oblivious to the unfolding drama. "I'm Mara, from the shelter. I came to talk to you about the puppies." Jake's heart raced. The shelter, his link to these little lives he had unexpectedly grown attached to. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine," she reassured him, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But there's something important I need to share with you. It could change everything." The words hung heavy in the air. Sophie looked between them, confusion knitting her brows. Jake felt an instinctive desire to shield her from the storm brewing, but he was also painfully aware that he could no longer hide behind walls built from fear and confusion. "What is it?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended. He needed answers, clarity amidst this rush of uncertainty. Mara took a step back, clearly gauging his reaction. "It's about one of the puppies. Specifically, the little girl with the white patch." She paused, waiting as realization dawned on Jake, who felt the color drain from his face at the mention of the puppy he had grown most attached to. She was born with a medical condition that we didn't disclose initially. We wanted to make sure she got placed in a responsible environment before anyone found out. It could complicate things for you. Words tangled in Jake's mind. Complicate how? He sensed an emotional thread unraveling, one he had only begun to weave. The tension thickened as Mara articulated the concern that had plagued him since he had taken them in. She might need surgery. It's not a life-threatening issue, but it will require resources, both emotional and financial. If you didn't want to take on that burden, we need to know now. Jake's mind raced. Beyond the decision of whether to adopt this little soul, he was forced to confront his own shadows. The thought of having to let go of her, or worse, failing to provide what she needed, sparked an inner tempest. Would he shrink under pressure or find the strength to advocate for her? He met Sophie's eyes across the table. She was clearly unsettled but determined to support him. Her presence ignited a layer of resolve within him. He couldn't back away now, not only for the puppy, but for himself, for the person he wanted to become. "I'm in," he blurted, surprising even himself. "I'll do whatever it takes." Mara regarded him with a mixed expression of admiration and caution. "It might be a lot more than you realize." "Bring it on," he insisted, adrenaline surging through him. Each heartbeat echoed a rhythm of newfound determination, a melody of accountability he had long avoided. As they exchanged details, Jake felt time pivot, the weight of responsibility shifting from a burden to a commitment. The dread that had plagued him earlier began to transform into a fierce drive to rise to the occasion. Just as he was beginning to process the enormity of the upcoming journey, Sophie leaned forward, urgency in her tone. "Jake, if this is what you want, I want to help too. We can navigate this together." Her statement struck him with an emotional force he hadn't anticipated. It was more than just her willingness to support him. It was an invitation to forge a partnership rooted in shared values and ambitions. Jake felt the connection between them strengthen amidst the complexity of the situation. Yet another opportunity to grow, professionally and personally, unfolding before him. Before they could delve deeper into the implications of what this would mean for all three of them, Mara's phone rang. As she stepped away to answer, Jake exchanged a glance with Sophie, their thoughts and apprehensions swirling in an unspoken pact. Whatever the future held for him and the puppy, this moment was only the beginning. But what Jake didn't know was that the challenges ahead would stretch beyond vet bills and recovery, testing the limits of his own resilience and the bonds he was striving to build with both the puppies and Sophie. As Mara returned, an enigmatic smile on her face, Jake felt reality shift once more, knowing that change was just around the corner. There was no turning back now. Jake paced the small living room, his fingers brushing over the cluttered coffee table, squeaky toys, half-empty dog bowls, and a stack of vet pamphlets. The weight of Mara's words still lingered in his mind. The puppy required surgery, a necessity he hadn't anticipated when he first brought them home. The soft whines of the furry trio seemed to mock his anxious thoughts. How could he ensure their well-being without jeopardizing his own stability? It felt as if a door had swung open, inviting both opportunity and trepidation. As he glanced at Sophie, who now seated herself on the couch, the lines on her forehead were deeply etched with concern. Their accidental journey into life as puppy parents had begun to unfurl into something more complex, and Jake was painfully aware that clarity often stemmed from confrontation, both with himself and the challenges that lay ahead. "I know it's a lot," Sophie began, her voice calm yet laced with a hint of anxiety. "But helping one dog feels like a chance to do something bigger." Her perspective lit a spark of resolve within Jake. He understood the sentiment. Still, the fear of failure nipped at the edges of his thoughts. Could he really juggle his life, his responsibilities, and the financial burden of a surgery? He pressed his lips together, weighing the choices. Sophie continued, "We can set a budget. Look at the resources we have. Maybe there are assistance programs at the shelter or local vet services that help with this kind of thing." "I'm open to that," Jake replied, feeling a measure of relief sweep over him. But what if we don't find any help? What if? What if? Sophie echoed, her tone shifting to remind him to stay grounded. You know, Jake, I've seen you handle the unexpected before, each time you've risen to the challenge. Think about how you dealt with the chaos during the move, how determined you were to create a space for us to call home. Her words painted a vivid picture of his recent past, small victories that slowly took shape. Maybe the fear he felt now was a skewed reflection of his worth, a remnant of insecurities that had no place in his evolving narrative. He was carving a path into the unknown, where responsibility and compassion intertwined. As they spoke, ideas began to spill forth, creating a plan they could implement together. They'd research, contact the shelter, ask around, and reach out to peers who had faced similar challenges. The possibility that their proactive measures might yield results sparked a flicker of excitement inside him. He could transform this challenge into an amalgam of advocacy, not just for the puppy, but for himself as well. In this space of newfound purpose, Jake suddenly questioned more than just logistics. He questioned who he was becoming in this process. Could he be someone who not only embraced challenges but thrived on them? Before they could finalize their plan, another wave of uncertainty surged through him. And what if I don't qualify? What if it ends up being something we can't afford? Sophie's gaze locked onto his, her eyes steady like anchors in a storm. Then we face it together. Whatever happens, we don't go into this alone. We always have each other. Her assurance cut through the chaos in his mind, a promise of partnership, ebbing the tide of his doubts. They were a team now, each carrying the weight of this decision, but also the spark of hope. Just then Mara returned, her phone still pressed to her ear but the conversation visibly shifting her mood. She caught the tail end of their discussion and paused. "You're not considering backing out, are you?" Jake quickly shook his head, the commitment now firm in his heart. "No, we're committed to helping her, whatever it takes." Mara's expression softened, and she smiled gently. "Good. You're going to need that resolve. There are surprises ahead. Things that will test not only the dog's resilience but yours too." Her cryptic words lingered in the air, nudging at the corners of his mind. What could that possibly mean? As Mara moved on to discuss the logistics of the medical procedures, Jake felt a spark of trepidation ignite once more. The challenges ahead hinted at more than just vet visits and costs. But the real journey was gearing up, and as the meeting moved onward, it became clear he was standing on the precipice of transformation, not just as a guardian, but as a person ready to confront what he had long neglected. What he didn't know was that hidden within those challenges lay an even deeper revelation about himself, one that could redefine everything. The following days felt like an emotional roller coaster for Jake. Every morning he woke up with a knot in his stomach, the burden of the puppy surgery looming over him like a dark cloud. Each task felt amplified. Getting their meals prepared, walking the dogs, or even working remotely became tinged with an urgency he hadn't felt before. Sophie was right. There was something bigger at stake than he initially realized. While his fears about finances clung stubbornly to his thoughts, something else began to shift as well. He felt an unexpected sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the dog anymore. It was about forging a new path in his life, one filled with the resolve to face obstacles, no matter how daunting. One evening, while browsing the internet for advice on financing vet bills, Jake stumbled upon a blog that detailed a series of community fundraisers people had organized for their pets. There were stories of bake sales, garage sales, and even pupathon events. He paused, the glimmer of an idea forming in his mind. Could he rally his friends and family for support? He could turn his anxiety into action, transforming worry into something proactive. That thought ignited a flicker of determination within him. He envisioned posters hanging in local coffee shops, social media campaigns, and possibly even reaching out to the community for sponsorships. His heart raced as he saw the possibilities unfolding before him. This could be more than financial help. It could become a way to engage with the people around him and strengthen his relationships. Jake turned to Sophie, her enthusiasm unchanging since they had first discussed the surgery. "What if we organized a fundraiser?" he suggested during dinner, barely holding back his excitement. Her face lit up. That would be incredible. We could set up our own event and have people pay to enter their dogs in a few fun contests. We could create a community event out of it, all while supporting a worthy cause. As they brainstormed different ideas for the event, Jake felt a renewed sense of confidence. The brewing uncertainty of his life started to soften as the thrill of planning their fundraiser took hold. They would engage the community, not only seeking funds, but also awareness and support for the shelter they had adopted their puppies from. However, in the midst of this newfound hope, shadows of self-doubt crept back in. But what if we don't raise enough money? What if no one shows up? Sophie stopped him with a gentle hand on his arm. We won't know until we try, Jake. Even if we only raise a little, it's still something. It's about the journey, not just the destination. Her words reflected back the fears he had faced before, each moment a step toward growth. Perhaps that was true. The act of engaging would serve as a catalyst for his transformation, teaching him to take risks rooted in authenticity, rather than clinging to the comfort of fear. As he prepared to take the next steps, Jake felt a rush of determination pulse through him. This was not just a fundraiser, it was a chance to reclaim agency in his life, while fostering genuine connection in a world that often felt disconnected. The shadows of doubt did not vanish, but they became woven into a tapestry of resolve and hope. With Sophie by his side and their puppies providing inadvertent encouragement with their playful antics, Jake began to outline a plan. They mapped the logistics of the event, anchoring themselves in the reality that they were moving forward, laying the foundation for a momentous change. Just as excitement began to swell, reality delivered another swift blow. Mara's uncertain words echoed in his mind, and Jake knew he had to face the unanticipated challenges that lay in wait. They were standing at the precipice of a larger, perhaps even more formidable conflict, one steeped in personal revelation. Days later, he received a call from the vet's office with unforeseen complications about the surgery costs. With the excitement dwindling and the financial reality biting harder than ever, he wondered once again if he'd made the right decisions. He gripped the phone tightly, his heart racing. The moment had come to face the ultimate question. Was he really ready to bear this burden? To dive into the depths of his capacity? There, staring down the gaping chasm of uncertainty, Jake knew he was no longer just advocating for the puppy. He was advocating for himself, and the challenges that awaited him would reveal secrets buried deep within, ones tied to his own fears, aspirations, and limits. And as the conversation continued, he realized an unavoidable truth. True transformation often lies just beyond the edge of confrontation. Jake hung up the phone, his throat dry as dust. The conversation had only confirmed what his instincts had already feared. The costs were significantly higher than anticipated. Panic surged through his chest, and he dashed thoughts through his mind with frantic energy. The weight now on his shoulders felt crushing, far more than just money. It was a test of his very character. As he sat on the edge of the couch, the puppies sprawled at his feet. He realized the urgency of the situation wasn't simply about the upcoming surgery. It was morphing into an exploration of everything he thought he knew about himself. Was it possible he could rise to meet this moment? Could he, the cautious man who always played it safe, truly initiate the change he desperately needed? Sophie joined him, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "Hey," she said softly, motioning him to look up. "What happened?" Jake took a deep breath, gathering the jumbled thoughts vying for dominance in his mind. "The vet just called," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "The surgery costs. They're way more than we planned." Sophie's expression flickered with concern, but quickly steeled into determination. "Then we'll figure it out, Jake. We're not going to let this stop us." "Stop us? Are you serious?" Frustration bubbled as he shot back. "It's not just that. I've never had to ask people for money before. What if they think I'm just being irresponsible? What if this backfires? Nothing worth having comes easy. You know that." Her unwavering support cut through his hopelessness like a hot knife through butter. "And think about it. By creating this fundraiser, you're not just asking for help, you're creating something meaningful, something that can connect people and show them our cause." Her belief in their vision, even in the face of adversity, began to ignite something within Jake. A small spark of courage chased off the tendrils of fear. if only temporarily. But the doubts still loomed large, heavy shadows, threatening to engulf his newfound drive. I just feel... He hesitated, searching for the right words. I'm not sure I'm equipped to do this. What if I let you down? What if I can't deliver? Sophie reached out, gripping his hand firmly. You won't let me down. This is a step for you too. You're not just chasing funds for a puppy. You're building a foundation for your own growth. Remember, this isn't just about the outcome. It's about the journey. As I said before, her insights echoed back to him, spinning around his thoughts with increasing clarity. This wasn't merely a battle against the impending surgery costs. It was a fight against the doubts that had long taken root in his life. Jake felt a burgeoning resolve taking shape, one release at a time. Okay, then let's do this, he said, his voice steadier. Let's push forward. We'll come up with a clear plan. We'll set a goal, get some outreach going. Jake's mind began to race ahead, thoughts spiraling into possibilities. I could create a social media page to share updates, perhaps a GoFundMe. We could mobilize the local dog owners. And we will, Sophie encouraged, sparking a wave of excitement within him. Show them what this is for, the surgery, the shelter. People want to support something they believe in. After all you've gone through to get here, this will resonate. Every word she spoke added bricks to the foundation he felt was beginning to form. Still, a whisper of doubt lingered, but now it was intertwined with a thread of hope. He envisioned drawing in not just monetary support, but community involvement, relationships blossoming from the effort. The clock ticked on, marking the shift from uncertainty to action. With each action Jake envisioned, the burden he bore lightened, a momentary realization that perhaps he had more inside him than he ever gave himself credit for. Yet as he set their plans into motion, each passing hour hinted at the bigger challenge to come. The next steps would require not only external engagement, but delve into territories of vulnerability he had long kept locked away. As he crafted posts, planned logistics, and set dates, Jake sensed a looming confrontation with more than just the fundraising process. There was something deeper waiting below the surface, a revelation of some sort, threatening to emerge. And as the night drew on, Jake found himself staring into the growing darkness filled with trembling questions, wondering if he was truly ready for the full weight of transformation that lay ahead. Jake poured himself another cup of coffee, the steam curling upwards as the sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting soft beams on his anxious face. The morning had arrived, yet the shadows of doubt still lingered in his mind. He scrolled through his phone, looking at similar fundraisers, each styled with catchy slogans. Did he even have what it takes to create something that would resonate? Just the thought of putting himself out there, vulnerable to the opinions of others, sent a shiver through him. Yet there was no turning back. Each time he envisioned the surgery, each moment captured in the urgency of life, something inside him flickered. He wasn't just fighting for money, he was advocating for a living being, a gentle soul that had unknowingly taken root in his heart. He needed to channel that passion, that drive. It struck him in a way he hadn't fully realized before. He wasn't merely chasing funds, he was forging a pathway to his own self-worth. Compelled by a newfound determination, he sat at the table, notebook open, and began outlining his vision for the fundraiser. A timeline, promotional strategies, and potential posts took shape as he engaged in a mental conversation he had long avoided. What if he encouraged local businesses to contribute? Their involvement could not only amplify his reach but create a sense of community around the cause. As he wrote, each word began to mold into an actionable step, dissolving some of the fear that clung to him. But deep down, another obstacle whispered. The pit of uncertainty questioned whether these ideas were enough to attract attention. Would people care enough to support them? Jake fought to silence that voice. Taking a deep breath, he leaned into the discomfort. Sophie found him immersed in his thoughts, her curiosity piqued by the passionate lines filling the pages. Hey, looks like you're on a roll, she noted, sliding into the chair across from him. What are you thinking? For a moment he hesitated, but then the impulse to share pushed him forward. I was considering involving local businesses. Maybe they could sponsor different aspects of the fundraiser, like covering costs or donating goods. The moment the idea escaped his lips, he felt a shift in the room. Sophie's eyes brightened with enthusiasm. That's brilliant. Businesses often want to engage with causes. You're giving them a chance to connect with the community while doing something good. What else? He unapologetically unleashed the torrent of thoughts flooding through him. Ideas of an online presence, showcasing the puppies, sharing their journey, and emphasizing the importance of the surgery. Slowly, his voice gained confidence. I believe we could even create a short video, personal stories that highlight the urgency behind it all. Sophie nodded, her excitement palpable. Let's do it. Let's draft a script, gather what we need. You know how much social media amplifies voices now. This could really take off. Her steadfast belief in their mission wrapped around him, granting warmth to the still cooling edges of his enthusiasm. Shifting his focus back to the page, Jake saw it morph into a blueprint, not just for a fundraiser, but for the kind of leader he aspired to be. Not just for the puppies, but for himself. However, as the ideas flourished, Jake felt the twinge of self-doubt start to creep back in. What if he failed? What if this grand vision unraveled before his eyes? The fears seemed to swell beneath the surface, threatening to drown out the resolve. He needed to confront that fear instead of dodging it. Each moment passed like a bullet, and time felt inadequate. Confrontation loomed, not just as a task to be completed, but as an internal reckoning he was wholly unprepared for. He would have to ask for support, potentially face rejection, and sift through his own insecurities. As the sun set, Jake gathered all of his notes ready to draft the initial outreach post. Doubts flickered and surged, testing his newfound resolve. If he was going to navigate this daunting path, confronting his vulnerability was an essential piece in the puzzle. He had uncovered something deeper than fundraising, a test of his own mettle. And just as he was about to press post, a sudden message pinged on his phone, bringing a different kind of urgency. He looked down, and the name caused his heart to race. The vet had sent a text. Did it contain further information about the surgery, or perhaps something that might shift the entire course of his plans? The weight of anticipation loomed. Jake swallowed hard. This could change everything. Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he opened the message, half expecting the worst but desperately hoping for good news. The words danced on the screen, encoded in a mix of clinical terminology and urgency. Hi, Jake. Just wanted to update you on Bella. She's stable, but we have some unexpected news. Please call as soon as you can. Panic gripped him. His fingers fumbled over the call button. Could this be a setback? Would he have to cancel the fundraiser altogether? What if she needed emergency treatment? Every pessimistic scenario flooded his mind, wrapping around his thoughts like a vice. Jake? Sophie's voice broke through the haze of his fears. She leaned closer, curiosity etched onto her face. What did the vet say? Gulping, Jake finally responded. I don't know yet. Something is, apparently, unexpected. Uncertainty clawed at him as he paced back and forth, needing to release the pent-up energy. Talking about funding and promoting felt insignificant now. His entire focus shifted towards Bella and what the future held for her. Jake stepped outside, the cool evening air biting against his skin, snapping him back to reality. He took a deep breath, attempting to anchor himself amid swirling thoughts. Encouraged by Sophie's presence, he fought against impending dread. With a decisive shake of his head, he forced himself to dial the vet's number. Hello, this is Dr. Smith. The vet's voice came through the line, calm and professional. I wanted to give you an update on Bella. Jake's breath hitched, each syllable weighty and full of possibility. Please tell me. What's going on? There's been a development. Bella delivered 4 healthy puppies earlier today. They're doing well, but I believe you'll need to make some decisions regarding her care and the puppy's future. A wave of relief washed over Jake, only to be quickly followed by a fresh swell of anxiety. He had wanted to save Bella, but now he had vulnerable lives connected to her. 4 puppies? He repeated, mind racing. What do I need to do? Dr. Smith continued. They all need to be monitored, especially Bella, who will need nutrition and possibly some extra support after the surgery. I recommend discussing their care with local fosters. You may also consider how to position these puppies as part of your fundraiser's story. The phone call ended, but the enormity of his new reality loomed heavy. Not only was he advocating for Bella's well-being, but he also carried the responsibility for her puppies. Initially, he felt overwhelmed. It was one thing to foster change with Bella alone. It was another entirely to introduce an entire litter of puppies into the mix. Sophie watched him intently, familiar with the whirlwind of emotions that could flash across his face. What did he say? Jake's initial response was a flood of feelings, but he quickly gathered them into focus. Bella had 4 puppies. We need to plan for them too. Sophie's excitement mingled with Jake's apprehension, igniting an unexpected spark within him. This could not just be a fundraising story. It could become about these puppies finding homes. It's a new beginning for them all. Her energy invigorated him, but he could feel doubt creeping back in. Could he effectively manage a fundraiser that not only focused on Bella, but also highlighted the needs of her puppies? This was no longer just about a single dog. This challenge expanded, and expectations intensified. Jake could see hints of an idea taking form, intertwined with uncertainty. The urgency had shifted. He was no longer merely a caretaker, but now held the role of orchestrator. His leadership potential to develop, hone, and rely on surrounded him. As he gazed at the sunset, thoughts clicked into place. "Let's do it," he declared suddenly, a confident tone surprising even himself. It was time to harness focus and convey each dog's story, every personal challenge, every victory, and every miracle of life. Yet, a voice deep within questioned whether he could embrace this leap, expand into a realm where passion and drive met with meticulous execution. With trembling hands, he turned back toward the table, strategizing how he would share their stories online. As he began drafting posts revolving around Bella and her puppies, a sense of clarity illuminated the path ahead. But beneath the surface, a disquiet lingered. The weight of the decisions to be made pressed heavily on his shoulders. A reminder that within this bright potential was still the shadowy realm of doubt in the corners of his mind. He had to confront every anxious thought head-on. Question after question formed, floating through his consciousness like arrows aimed to puncture hope. But what if aiming for success drew back the bowstring just enough to propel him forward? The moment was critical, the stakes were elevated, and as he typed furiously, the hesitance returned. Could he capture the true essence of their fight? But all he could do was take one action, commit to one choice. In the end, what he needed was just as pivotal as the puppy's future, a decisive act of leadership. With the cursor blinking, Jake hesitated. What would he reveal next? And could he reveal enough of himself to inspire true connection? Days turned into weeks, and as autumn painted Maplewood in vibrant hues, Jake stood at the forefront of a momentous transformation. The puppies, now 6 weeks old, tumbled over each other in a flurry of excitement, their antics echoed in every corner of his mind. What had begun as a challenge to save Bella had evolved into both a community effort and a path toward his own emotional renaissance. The fundraiser, dubbed Puppy Power in Maplewood, gained traction. Local businesses rallied around the cause, offering sponsorships and donating prizes for raffles. Jake, once hesitant and drowned in self-doubt, now moved with purpose, fueled by the energy of the community that was forming around him. Each promotional post shared on social media sparked a flurry of engagement. Likes, comments, and shares amplified the narrative of hope and reclamation they aimed to promote. There was no turning back. Each day he ventured out with the puppies, slightly more bold, slightly more confident. The local park transformed into a hub of laughter and joy as families came to meet the puppies, a tangible extension of the connections he had feared for so long. He witnessed children playfully squabbling over the chance to hold the wriggling pups, each interaction erasing a slice of the isolation that had once defined his life. His emotional walls, painstakingly built to shield him from heartbreak, began to crumble like dried leaves underfoot. Staring at each adoptive family glowing with excitement, Jake recognized a powerful realization. He had not just invited people into his life. He had invited them into a bond that spurred his personal growth. Each pup that found a new home was a testament to overcoming isolation, a chance at new beginnings both for them and Jake. And in every joyous reunion, each tail wag and happy bark, he mirrored his rebirth. His vibrant need for connection met with raw authenticity. Amid all the hustle, Jake continually felt Sophie's steady presence beside him. They collaborated effortlessly, their ideas intertwining like vines seeking light. As she played a crucial role in the success of the fundraiser, her support became a wellspring from which he drew strength. Not only did she become a partner in purpose, but also in vision, helping him to navigate the merging paths of business and genuine human connection. On the day of the fundraising event, the park was transformed. Banners flapped in the breeze, laughter echoed as faces from every corner of the community mingled, united by the common goal of giving Bella and her puppies the care they deserved. Jake's heart raced as he stood on the makeshift stage, looking out at the swelling crowd. Their smiles and anticipation gave him an electric charge. This was not merely an event. This was a celebration of life, of love, and of connection. When he stepped up to speak, he felt an unfamiliar calm settle over him. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady, resonating with the affirmation of his journey. "Today isn't just about raising funds to help Bella. It's about why we care, about the lives we can change together. When I first brought these puppies home, I was lost in my own fears. But you all have shown me that community can redefine us, can pull us out of darkness, and light a fire for change." As applause echoed around him, Jake felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. Not out of sorrow, but in overwhelming acknowledgement of where he had come from. He had transformed from a man imprisoned by isolation into one who now stood tall in the face of uncertainty, ready to embrace every moment the future had in store. With every word, he celebrated the people surrounding him, the shared vision that had emerged from countless meaningful conversations, and each gust of wind felt like a soft reminder of how far he had come. Through that event, they raised the necessary funds and drew attention to local shelters, while also inviting anyone willing to open their hearts and homes to Bella's puppies. By the end of the day, their success rippled like a warm wave, filling his heart with replaceable comfort. One that signified he had bonded not just with each little pup, but with every individual who had come to support a cause that transcended mere transactions. As Bella and her remaining puppies grew into their own, Jake felt solid ground underfoot, a newfound clarity shaping his future. His career blossomed alongside the connections he forged. He took up initiatives for pet welfare, leveraging his experience to boost awareness. Jake had set aside the quiet shame he had carried, re-emerging as an advocate. True to his journey, he stood at the cusp of personal validation, his achievements no longer fueled by fear, but by a vibrant community nourished by empathy, love, and grit. An unexpected ripple of fulfillment coursed through him. He had lived the stories of embracing responsibility, pursuing passion, and finding beauty in chaos. And standing at that intersection of vulnerability and transformation, Jake felt the surge of self-realization settle in. He had conquered his personal battles, demonstrated authentic courage, and proved to himself that he was more than a reflection of past choices. Today, he was grounded, anchored within a life bursting with potential. As families whisked away Bella's puppies, Jake reveled in the sense of closure. With solid confidence, recognized competence, and a newly established position in the community, he'd turned struggle into strength. This was just the moment he needed, an unmistakable declaration of personal achievement. Jake leaned against the park's wooden railing, watching the warmth of connections unfold before him. And in that instant, he knew he could step forward anew, ready for the adventures life would bring. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to embrace your own transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread vital stories about overcoming struggles. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's journey and what his transformation means for you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and witness the power of community and personal growth. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.